Australian exporters are now trying to work out just how much Donald Trump's new tariffs will cost them. Australian beef will now face a 10% tariff. Get that in your hamburgers in America. Also, in addition, a 25% tariff on foreign-made cars expected to raise prices for Australians, while steel and aluminium will also be affected by existing tariffs. Then there's the wine industry facing a baseline tariff set at 10%, although companies like Treasury Wine Estates believe the impact on them will be minimal. Let's head to Sydney and break it all down now. We're joined by Professor Tim Harcourt from UTS, host of the Airport Economist channel right here on Ticker. So much to unpack, sir. Great to have you on the network as always. Talk to us about Trump's tariffs. If you're investing in the stock market, you've certainly felt it. But outside of America, are you likely to really feel all of this?
Oh, you certainly do. I mean, tariffs hurt workers, they hurt consumers, and ultimately they hurt investors and superannuation funds that we've seen the impact on the stock market. With Australia and the US, as you highlighted in the program, there are some tariffs. They're not as high as the ones on Vietnam and Taiwan and some of our other trading partners, but significant in their own right. I think to some extent for Australia, we're watching the impact on mainly our trading partners in the Asia Pacific rather than the direct tariffs. Having said that, if you're in steel or aluminium, beef or wine, they're going to hurt. Having said that, you saw the wine tariffs there. I mean, China put on a tariff of 220% on our wine exporters, so the American tariffs are quite minimal. That may be a saving grace compared to what we're used to. And of course, China completely backed down because the Chinese tariffs hurt China more than they hurt Australia. Economists,
people in your position have, one after the other, have been very much anti-tariffs. Is there any good news from tariffs? Like, why would this be being done by President Trump? Some saying it's a hark back to the 1960s when local manufacturing used to work. We saw what happened to local manufacturing of the car industry in Australia as soon as tariffs were removed. It basically killed off the car industry unless the government was going to pay for it to stay. So is there any good news from tariffs, or is Trump, the art of the deal, just trying to force other countries to reduce the tariffs that they place on goods being imported from the US?
I think you've hit the nail on the head, Aaron, with the art of the deal. I don't think Donald Trump has thought of this in economic terms. I don't think he thinks like that. I think he sees, his great role as being a successful businessman, a successful negotiator, who, in the same way as he did as a businessman, as president, he'll put something on the table and then force you to come to take it off and gain concessions. And by that way, he places the United States right in the middle of the world trading system instead of the WTO and Geneva and so on. So you've seen this conga line of people going to the White House to talk to Trump about concessions for the removal of the tariffs. So I think you're right. I think economists, the majority of economists are against tariffs for the adverse economic effects. They're not always against industrial policy, but they're against tariffs as a bad mechanism, if you like. But I think you've got to think of Trump in terms of negotiation tactics and geopolitics, not economics, and you'll sort of see what he's trying to do to some extent.
We've seen Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House. We've got these pictures here from inside the Oval Office where Netanyahu came and made the statement that, hey, we are going to reduce tariffs on the United States, get rid of them completely. This is music to the ears of President Trump. I want to take you back to what you said before, though, about the WTO. I remember being in Russia and working for a Russian news channel which had just started back in 2006. I think it was either at the end of 2005 or 2006 where this happened. I was doing a story as a business reporter about whether or not Russia should join the World Trade Organization. There was a lot of pressure on Russia to join the WTO, but also a lot of reasons to not. And the view of the network was that why should Russia be part of the World Trade Organization? We fast forward nearly 20 years from that time. Can't believe it's been 20 years. And now the United States is essentially taking up the same point that Russia had, which is you sign up to the WTO, but you end up being a dummy for others who get some sort of concession. What's your viewpoint on that?
Well, the rules-based order that was set up at Bretton Woods after World War II has provided prosperity to the world and stability in terms of rules and institutions. It's not saying that there should be reform from time to time of those institutions, but for the most part, small open economies like Australia benefit from those sorts of institutions. Once you take it off and it's a free-for-all, and the big superpowers get their way, then that's a testament to instability. Now, having said this, some countries join the WTO and don't always play by the rules, and you sort of hinted at that at your pictures there before. I mean, Bill Clinton as president was very, allowed China to join the WTO with strong support from the Keating government. There was a lot of antipathy to China from Democrats as well as Republicans, but China joined the WTO on the promise that China would be a global citizen, it would eventually become a democracy, and would have prosperity and democracy hand in hand. Now, that's not happened.
China's and that's the complaint, right? That's what the US is saying, and what many other countries probably fear to say and aren't able to say. But China floods local markets with cheap products that undermine the local manufacturing. That is very much a widely held view, particularly in the Western world, where we have living standards of a certain height and we just can't compete. But from a consumer perspective, do they care?
Well, people say they're very patriotic and they want to fly Qantas and drive Holden and bank Commonwealth, but when put to the test, they don't always do that, as you know, Aaron. See what I mean? That was when I grew up. You drive Holden, you fly TAA if you flew, you bank Commonwealth and so on. So, consumers don't, as we found out with the Brax Automotive, inquiry, people are not always patriotic when it comes to purchasing.
No, the second that the tariffs came off after that Brax review into the automotive industry in Australia, and the idea that these car companies should make smaller, greener, more efficient vehicles, Australians, we saw Holden new car sales drop from top 5 to about 15th place, because the second Australians could have a choice, they chose not to buy local, and I think that that's an interesting point. I'm interested in your views on the future of manufacturing. I know that you talk a lot about this, and Airport Economist. Your series is fantastic for going around the world. My car is a Ford. Once upon a time, it would have been a Ford made down in Geelong at the engine planting stamp and assembled up in Campbellfield. That doesn't happen anymore. It was made in Thailand, where when you have a look at a video of how it's made, robots everywhere. If we bring back manufacturing to the Western world, to the United States, to Australia, it's not going to be humans putting the lid on top of the tube anymore, is it? It's going to be a very advanced manufacturing system. What are your views on that?
Yeah, I mean, with the Brax review, of course, the tariffs were off well before that happened, and design in Victoria and South Australia was regarded as very, very good and still is in the global car industry. I think to some extent the big assembly lines, making underwear and socks and low cost stuff, I think that's not going to happen in the Western world again. I think manufacturing will be more high skill, more design related, more automated, AI and so on. Even in the Airport Economist, we went to India, which we launch tomorrow, and Taiwan. Taiwan's moved up the value chain from an assembler of Japanese TV sets to a designer and, the centre of semiconductors. We went to Chennai, and of course, Mahindra and Mahindra in Chennai is a high-tech, car company, and in India, they design everything from aerospace to rockets and aviation and so on. So, all countries want to move up the value chain, Aaron, and a lot of it does depend on design and skills and capacity. So I don't think it's quite as simple anymore as the poor countries do this and the rich countries do that.
It's fascinating, isn't it? What you're essentially saying is the countries that when we sit in Australia and we think that someone in India or China or Vietnam is assembling, they're doing it low wage, but the fact is that these countries have moved to middle class. Look what has happened since Nixon went to China back in the 70s. There has been a huge increase in living standards for the Chinese compared to where they were, and the price has become more expensive as a result there as well. Let's talk India. You've got the big launch of the Airport Economist India episode. I'm looking forward to being by your side in Sydney at the launch of that. Tell us about the program.
Yeah, well, we've been working with the Australian Indian government and the Queensland government for quite some time on India. Our first show was Mumbai. Tomorrow we launch Bengaluru and Chennai. Bengaluru, of course, the home of Infosys and a lot of the big IT companies, and the centre of the Indian space industry, so important to the world and to Australia. And then Chennai, we visit Mahindra & Mahindra, Kellington, some Indian and Australian companies that work in the Detroit of India, if you like, Chennai, and also Tata's enormous campus that they've got outside Chennai, just looking at the AI and some of the digital innovation coming out of India, which is pretty mind-blowing. And interestingly, Aaron, there's a lot of Taiwanese investment in southern India and vice versa. So even though we did Taiwan and India quite separately for the Airport Economist channel, we saw a lot of crossover given the cross-border investment of the Taiwanese into Chennai and Bengaluru in India.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because the colloquial view, as I mentioned, of a country like India from the perspective of the West is that its power is people, 1.3 billion people. But the reality is they are shifting their economy from being a people-based economy to a tech-based economy. Then you have a look at a country like Australia, which the OECD, our sophistication of an economy is at the bottom. We dig it up, we send it overseas, they make it, we buy it back off them. We don't make it ourselves, and very rarely do we design it ourselves. What can Australia learn from a country like India, which was a member of the Commonwealth, which has gone from
with
this point?
respect
What do we
to
do?
Australia, when you look at a lot of our extractive sectors, a lot of the components, a lot of the design, a lot of the tech that goes. I actually think travelling around the world as the airport economist, you meet a lot of Australians who do technology in the mining sector and the extractive sector. I ran into wine tech experts in Argentina who were from McLaren Vale in South Australia. So I actually think that being a large exporter of minerals and agriculture does provide opportunities for design and assembly. And also, Australia's no slouch when it comes to healthcare and the biomedical sector. We see that in Melbourne where you sit, and we see the elements of that in India with a lot of the investment between Australia and India. So I actually think the Australia's more diverse economy than we give credit for, and we have a large group of entrepreneurs now scouring the world looking for opportunities and providing a lot of design and innovative solutions to other countries as well as to Australia.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Tim Harcourt, appreciate your time. Look forward to the launch of the India episodes, Airport Economist, right here on Ticker. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Aaron.